our guest speaker, Mr. Steve O'Connor, and give you a brief profile. Mr. Steve O'Connor is the editor of Library Management and Library Management China. Previously, he was a university librarian of Hong Kong Polytechnic University and University of Technology in Sydney. Mr. Steve O'Connor is the Director of Information and CEO of Kaval Collaborative Solutions, which is an Australian not-for-profit company established to provide library services to libraries in Australia.
Okay, I'm Alisa, PhD from School of Liberal Arts, and I'm interested in the perils of publishing very much. In which meaning do you mean by that? Is it a chance or a threat to us?
I'm Chutima Sajana, chair of the doctoral degree program.
I'm Samang Suvsman from School of Human Ecology. I'm Samroy Komlayut from School of Liberal Arts.
My name is Somphon. I have short memory.
I'm Taratva Trairat. I'm a faculty member of School of Liberal Arts. I'm teaching English.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your welcome. Is that better? If you can I'll swallow it, I think. Can I thank Chutima for inviting me here today? I've had the pleasure of knowing Chutima for many years, and I rarely meet her in Bangkok. I meet her everywhere else in the world. But I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm very honoured and very humbled to be here. And I would like to run this afternoon more as a workshop than as a lecture. I think it's better to be, instead of being the sage on the stage, it's better to be the guide on the side. I've had a lot of experience in publishing and in libraries, and I'd like to share that with you. But it is shared better if I get questions. And so I've had one question already about the perils of publishing, and I hope to address that during the talk this afternoon. I would like to cover this afternoon about, who are authors, who are the publishers, how to target journals, and what kind of ideas you might want to generate for publishing and open access. Because one of the perils that I would like to talk about is the changing publishing industry. The world of publishing is changing, and unless you change your perception of what that is, you'll be left behind. And so that brings me neatly into talking about the academic journal, peer review, plagiarism, and so on. So I hope it to be fairly practical. For the past 5 years, I've been living in the very environmentally insensitive city of Hong Kong. As you can see, it's very, very bright. Uses a lot of electricity, burns a lot of carbon gases, but it's a great city to live in, and it's a very compact city of about 7 million people. But unlike Bangkok, which is spread out, Hong Kong just goes up. And so I used to live on the 21st floor, and I'd look down on all the ants down there. So it was good. But I resigned from PolyU, Hong Kong PolyU, where we had 25,000 students, and the library had 160 staff members. I resigned from that in December, and I've moved back to Australia. So I live on the ground floor, and I live there with my wife and our 2 dogs and a few cattle. But regardless of whether I live there or I live in Hong Kong or in Bangkok, I think we all live in the same world because of the internet and the way the internet plays on our professional lives in particular. As our introducer very kindly said, I'm the editor of Library Management, and I've been the editor for the last dozen years, I think. I've forgotten when I started. So I brought along 1 issue. But if I'll pass it around and you can keep that. But it's a rarity, you know. So treasure it when you touch it, because it has tactility. You can touch it. Whereas now most of the journal is not published in paper anymore. So to see this and to look at it is something from the past. When I was in Hong Kong, I started another journal called Library Management China, and it's completely in simplified Chinese, and so it is a different journal. They're different journals, but they build bridges to each other. And so I've been trying to get Chinese authors, the best Chinese authors, to publish here, and then translate 1 or 2 into the international edition. And then I've been trying to get some of the better articles here on topics of interest to the Chinese and publish them in here. So there's a purpose there. So if we could pass those around. Emerald also have an awards, doctoral research awards, and I'll pass information about that around, because as doctoral students you should be very much interested in that, and you can apply for that award. And finally, I've got 2. I'm not satisfied with having 1 name card, I've got to have 2. So I have 1 to be the editor of Library Management China. You're welcome to take some of those. And then this is me, the Director of Information Exponentials. And you can have a look at the website. The website is listed there. And it gives you a bit of the idea of what I'm doing and trying to do. And essentially, what I'm trying to do is to talk about the future. I'm not sure what the Thai word for future is. But in Chinese, it's Wei Lai. In Vietnamese, it's Tien Lai. In English, it's just the future. But the future is happening to us all and happening very quickly. And so when you move out into your academic careers or into library careers, it's one thing that you really need to develop tools and understanding about if you are going to cope with that. So to talk about authors, this is an article here about how to write the great novel. And I guess that's not what we are about. We are about writing articles for scholarly publishing, for academic publishing, and to communicate ideas. And unlike if you write a great novel, you will make a lot of money if you pick the right publisher. But I don't know of any author who has ever received a royalty for publishing a journal article. So if you publish in library management, if you publish in the Journal of Academic Librarianship, if you publish in any academic journal, you will never make any money. So if you want to leave now, you can leave. Because why do you want to publish? And I know that it's true, I think, in Thailand, that if you wish to have your PhD accepted, you have to publish in an international journal. And that's tough. That really is tough. I think of it, if I were coming to Thailand and having to be an English native speaker, then having to learn Thai and then publish in Thai, I would say, oh, it's too hard. Buhao. And so I know what you are trying to do is very, very hard. So if there's anything I can do to help, I'm only too glad to help. And particularly about ideas that you might want to publish and about how you might think about getting into library management or any other range of journals. Because half the battle of getting published is having something to say. You know, what do you want to say? What do you want to say? And I know you're doctoral students, but I don't know what you are studying. You know, what is the topic of your research? And if you are going to write something about what happens at this university, then you are unlikely to get published internationally unless you can set it in a context. Context is very, very important. And so I take the view as an editor, my job is to help authors get published. Having said that, I think our rejection rate is about just under 50%. So for every 100 articles that are submitted, I will only publish 50. So a lot get rejected. But I never reject an article with rudeness, all right? And so you should never, if you write and you get rejected from library management or another journal, don't go up and go and cry. You know, try and learn from the experience and try and learn why was I rejected. Because people do not reject you because they don't like you, or they don't like Thai people, or they don't like academics, or they don't like this. It's because of the standard which you're meant to reach. And I know that you would like to get published, but I also know that you would not want to get published without reaching a standard, international standard. So if you do get rejected, what's the first thing you should do? Yeah. Well, I would write to the editor. And if the editor hasn't made clear why he has rejected it, or she, I will always respond and, you know, and say why. When I reject something, I always try to say why, you know, and either there's a huge variety of reasons, and there are, I'll come to some during the course of the talk, but never die not knowing. All right? So write, because editors are approachable people, and at least this one is, and I may not respond immediately because of, you know, trying to get to all the emails, but I will try and respond. Okay? So try and find out. I think it's a matter of understanding what's happening in our profession, and I think it's very important to try and anticipate for the future what is likely to happen. And I should get my spelling correct there. It should be want to say instead of one. Publishers. This is where the perils are, I think, because I can talk about how to get published, but you are moving into a world which is rapidly changing in terms of publishing. Because what is traditional publishing? If you look at the growth of publishing and journal publishing, it really expanded a lot in the 1960s. Before that, the journals were owned by societies, learned societies. And so you would find a lot of journals by various library associations, by groups of librarians who've had a particular interest and they formed a journal. And usually they, would publish their own journal. They would form an editorial committee. They would go find a printer, not a publisher, a printer, and publish it, and so on. But that's all changing now. And as many commercial companies grew up to publish the journals, and it's a mixed blessing, because if you had owned your own journal, right, and you sold it then to a publisher like Elsevier, they publish a lot of library journals, Emerald publish a number of library journals, and so on. The profession does not own those journals any longer. They're owned by the publishers. That's a good thing and a bad thing. But now we are seeing the aggregation of publishers. So if there were that many publishers, there might only be that many publishers now, because publishers are merging. They're merging together. And so the motivation of a publisher is to do what? What does a publisher want to do? Make money. Make money, 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 money. And so they're not really interested in the ideas that we are. We're talking about ideas and so on, and communication. They're interested in making money. And having said that, they perform an important role, but they are doing that. So we're moving, the world of traditional scholarly publishing is there, and we are moving into a new world. And so you can look at blogs, and the development of ideas is really the challenge that each of you have. You'll have your own topic for your thesis, and you can engage in the development of ideas through blogs. 10 years ago you couldn't do that, they didn't exist. So it's a new way of developing ideas, and you might then turn those ideas into traditional journal articles, but as a community here, you've got a community of academics and doctoral students, and you have seminars to explore ideas and to critique, not to criticise, but to critique each other. And now you've got the chance with blogs and so on to meet people elsewhere in the world and to critique your ideas, so you're very lucky. Libraries are now having institutional repositories, and so I know the one I had ran in Hong Kong had an institutional repository, and we published all the theses of all the students at the university, and we published as many of the articles which might be published by academics at PolyU, but they were the pre-published versions. And so the published versions are in the journal, the pre-published versions are, the Word version, the electronic version that you send to a publisher. As a library, we could publish that. And we also looked at publishing works which were not published in commercial material. So if you did a paper or a PowerPoint on a particular topic, the library would publish it for you. And so it's a good way of exposing your ideas to the world and getting that out there. So what I'm saying is that the world is changing, and you have different opportunities now to publish and to experience that. The library uses software like DSpace. It's a free software, and it enables everything that PolyU had, and we had about 6,000 or 7,000 items there. And so everything that I wrote in the last 5 years was on the PolyU website, presentations and so on. And then they're available across the internet with the appropriate metadata. So it's worthwhile looking at. This is the traditional publishing cycle. At the top you have the author, a user as an author, the publisher, the librarian, and then the user as a reader. And what the author does, when they want to get published, they send a manuscript to the publisher and you give away your IPR. Do you all know what the IPR is? IPR is a very important thing to remember. It's your intellectual property rights. Yeah. It's when you write something, if you sat down and wrote 10 words now, if I asked you to write 10 words, you own those words. You have IPR, intellectual property rights to those 10 words. All right? But then if you go to a publisher and say, I want to publish those 10 words, the publisher says, yes, I will publish them for you, but you have to sign away your IPR. Right? You have to sign away your intellectual property rights to those 10 words. For how long? It'll be for your lifetime plus 80 years. So I'm not coming back to check on it. But if you don't agree with that, if you don't want to sign away your IPR, you don't have to do that, but you won't get published. The publisher wishes to have the IPR so they can have your content and sell it year after year after year. And I can show you some information about that. The librarian turns around and gives money, gives a lot of baht to the publisher in order to buy the publisher's content. And so if you want to get library management, you have to give a lot of baht to Emerald, and they will give you that. But the world is changing, and so you, as an author, you could publish yourself and publish directly to the author, but to the reader. Okay, so the software is there, and that might be a blog. So you're publishing directly to a reader. Or you might give your document to a library and they'll publish it, say, using institutional repository. And there are a number of libraries throughout the world who are publishing journals. And they will invariably allow you to keep your IPR, and which is good. And that's what they call open access. Open access meaning that the library or whoever else is publishing that journal will make it available free on the web. And so that's open access. But to be realistic, nothing costs nothing. So everything costs something. And so if I want to print this, somebody has to pay for it. The paper, the ink, and the time to publish it. And so open access journals are not free, because somebody is subsidising them. And so the jury is out as to how viable a lot of open access journals will be. But they are there, and if you want to use them, you should. If you want to use an open access journal, I think the criteria you should be considering really is what is the quality of that article, of that journal? What is the quality? Is the quality of that journal in my community, my LIS community, as strong as if I were to publish in library management or the Journal of Academic Librarianship, or whatever you choose to publish in? And so the impact of open access is important. And so that is the balance, between the traditional publishing, and if you think that traditional publishing is the only way to go, then you're missing out on a huge range of opportunities to do that. Why would you want to publish? Well, I guess because... Yeah. Yeah.
But the traditional publishing cycle and the new way of model, do we have concern about the credibility in terms of you publish it by yourself and you send to the publisher? Because it seems like for the new model, it seems like technology helps you or allow you to do that, but still be the question in terms of the credibility or in terms of whether or not you have kind of, is it comparing to the traditional one, you have peer review system and editorial board, but for the new style, technology allows you to do that, but it seems like I'm not sure for the academics in terms of whether or not it's credible or kind of you don't have any peer reviews, how good you can find, and are there any concern in terms of?
Oh, it's a very good point, and clearly I saw that there was a new electronic journal in librarianship published only about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they had an editorial board, but they knew, and you know, I don't know how long they will last. I don't know. Didn't know the people on the editorial board, and so the whole question of credibility and of quality comes into question. But when you're starting your career, in particular, you want to get published. And when I started, I used to do presentations at conferences. You know, I said, please take me, please take me. But I would publish in conference proceedings, I would do all kinds of things. And then gradually I moved into the more credible, respectable journals. So yes, the question is there, but you may decide, I'd just like the experience of getting published, and then I can add that to my CV and gradually build on that. So the question you raise is very, very important. It's a very good question. But there are different reasons you might choose to publish in a journal like that. And that's where you've got opportunity, you know, to do those things where, you know, 10, 15 years ago you didn't. But you have to make that choice. And if you're a doctoral student, I would make that choice with your supervisor. You know, saying, I'm thinking of publishing here, or I'm thinking of presenting a paper at this conference. Do you think it's a good thing? But it gives you experience, and experience is very, very helpful. Is that okay? And so you will want to publish because you will want to get your doctoral degree. That's a very good motivation. But I publish now because I want to communicate ideas. And when I went to PolyU, I had been working as a university librarian in Australia for 11 years rather. And then I became the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of a company working in libraries. And so when I came to PolyU, I had a lot of experience and a lot of publications. And I've got over 60 journal articles published. But most of my staff didn't have anything published. And so we were doing some innovative things at PolyU. So I worked with different staff members to publish. We published on scenario planning, we published on staff development, future staff skills, but I wrote it as a co-author with other people. So if you want to get published, that's often a good way as well, you know, to write as a co-authored article, you know, with your supervisor or with somebody else that you've met and worked with. It's very good. So 4 of my staff at PolyU co-authored papers with me, and that they did a lot of work for them. They didn't get a free ride, and so they can stand and say, I published. I've got a journal article published in a very credible journal. But having my experience was helpful to them, but they did a lot of work towards it as well. When you get published, and you get a number of articles published, effectively what you're doing is saying to the profession that I'm a trusted author. You know, the ideas that I write about are trusted by the community. And it's because of peer review, the articles that I've published have been peer reviewed, and people say that they are good ideas, and so other people in the community can say, well, that's a good thing. And so when you publish and you publish and you publish and you publish, you are building up the respect for you as an author, right? And the trust. And trust is such an important thing. It's the most important thing to me, that I am trusted, and I won't do anything to alleviate that trust. And I'll talk a bit about plagiarism. And that's one very good way to kill trust. Boom, buhao, buhao, hen buhao. So trust is a very important concept that you're working with. You want your work to be trusted, and you want yourself as an author to be trusted. This is the latest data that I've got, but clearly the average number of articles being read is increasing. And so if you're not wearing glasses already, and many of you are, as I do, your eyes get tired from that reading you'll do. This is an interesting slide which said that a couple of years ago that in the States, academics were still reading a lot of print articles, but in Australia, they'd moved across to the electronic. And I think that's where it's all happening now. You know, so you won't find too many of those artifacts, you know, the hard copy of a journal floating around. Emerald, for the most part, doesn't publish in print now much at all. No library wants it. What do you take, mostly electronic? Okay. But, you know, that is clearly the trend, you know, to get things electronic. One of the other interesting things is when you have a look at one of those issues, it might have 10 articles in it. And but once that issue has been published, those 10 articles become individual digital objects floating around in a database. And so they have no togetherness, they have no coherence, other than they are published by Emerald. And so when you're searching a database like Emerald and you put in a term library, you could find an article from library management, you could find an article from any number of journals. Could be from a business journal, could be from a nursing journal. And so the mode of publishing and searching becomes very, very different. Because before you would have the coherence of having an issue and having articles on a particular topic there, but no longer the case. Once it is published, they all go wandering off in a database, and they are only digital objects. And your university library will be looking at different ways of making those more readily available. At PolyU, we engaged in discovery services, and so that when you use the library catalogue, if you go to the library catalogue, you would look for library management. Type in library management, you would find it and go there. At PolyU, we were indexing all the articles, and so you didn't need to look for library management. You would look for an article on staff development, you would look for an article on budgets in the university library, you would look for articles on the future of libraries, and so you would find articles in library management, Journal of Academic Librarianship, or whatever. So the libraries are becoming much smarter at getting that information to you. And it's worthwhile understanding that, because when you write an article, you're writing for an audience. You're not writing for yourself. You're writing for, for children to read what you're writing about, or for me to read it, or for everybody else in the room to read it. You always write for an audience. And the audience is not here at the Open University. It's not here just in Bangkok. It's an international audience. And more, it's a multidisciplinary audience. It's not just libraries. And so if you've got a topic of interest, information management, for instance, you could be writing for a very broad range of readers. And it's worthwhile thinking, imagine a room where your audience is, the readers, and imagine, who am I writing for? Who am I writing for? And it's worthwhile thinking about. Who knows how many journals are published in library science? How many? In the world. Can anyone guess? That's 7,500. Yeah. Could you, if I asked you to write down on a piece of paper 5 of the best library journals in the world, would you be able to do it? Could you do it? Who could do it? Write down the titles of the 5 of the best library journals that you might want to publish in the world. Could you do it now? No? Okay. Oh, I understand. And I'm asking the question because I think it's a very important thing to do. I could rattle off 20, 25 that I would like to publish in. And it's worthwhile taking a few days. Go down to the library. You've got a very friendly librarian. She's a little forgetful, but but she's very nice. And work out what are the journals that are published in library science, in perhaps the area that you're interested in. What area are you interested in? Okay. So trying to work out where you would want to publish library technology. Okay. So do you know about the Journal of Library Automation? So, that could be a key one for you. If you were talking about changes in library technology affecting library staff or users, you might go to the Journal of Academic Librarianship, or you might go to college and research libraries. There's a whole variety. You should go down and make a list, of 20 to 30 journals, because you get an idea of where they are. When you find those journals, if you have a look inside, have you seen that? If you look in here, that's the list of the editorial board. Right? They're the people who mostly, not always, but mostly do the reviews of the articles in here. And so by seeing those names and, just scan down, you see them come from all different parts of the world. And yet they're usually the people who are very experienced, and you'll find their names coming up time and time again. There's one guy on my board called Ed Evans. He's a professor from Flagstaff in Arizona, and I've never met him. I've never met him face to face, but he's a good friend because we talk all the time. But you'll find his name in a lot of textbooks on libraries. he's written about 7 or 8 different textbooks. And he's a great reviewer. He's a very generous reviewer. But get to know, from each of those journals, who are the editorial board, because you'll find the experts in your field, and it's worthwhile knowing. In Library Management China, you'll find the editorial board there, and I've got the top 8 university librarians in China. I sought them, the best ones out, and they all agreed to be on the board. And so they do pretty tough. The Chinese are pretty hard on each other, but they do good reviews, and that's important. So make it a job to find out which journals are there and what you might want to publish in. If you were to look at the dollars that are in publishing in the world, this is not just libraries, but it's 2002, so the data is a little bit out of date. But if you look at Reed Elsevier, in 1 year they had close on $8 billion US dollars worth of sales. That's in 2002, 10 years ago. So if they're not up around the $14 billion worth, and then you put all the other publishers in the case, it's a very big industry, publishing. A lot of money flowing around. So you get a bit of an idea of what they are. Since this has happened, Wiley have merged with Blackwell's, Taylor and Francis have been, and Springer have merged with Kluwer. And so there's been a lot of change in the ownership of various publishers. In terms of the dollars going to publishers, the orange section is the United States, America. So most of the dollars coming for publishing comes from the United States. The blue section is Europe, and we're in the small yellow section. So, Asia, Australasia, the Pacific is really the small section, around 6, 7%, 8%. I'd just like to ask you about whether you agree with me that perception matters more than reality. My view is that perception is much more important than reality. What you perceive to be the publishing industry, what you perceive to be the best journals to publishing in, the way you think. When I come to this university, I perceive it to be a very good university. The reality, I presume, is the same, but my perception is much more important, isn't it? And so the reality should always come along after perception. And so the perception of where and how you want to publish is much, much more important than the reality. And so for you as a group here in Thailand, it may be different to what I think, but that doesn't matter. That, you stick at it because